In this step-by-step tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a beautiful wreath. Now these are two separate designs and you don't have to duplicate what I've used in any way. You can simply go in your garden and see what works for you. So first of all, I'm going to talk you through what I'm using today. So ingredients I have here are things like conifer, I've got Douglas pine, buried hedera that a lot of us will just cut down and put in the compost, is actually perfect for wreaths. Also have hydrangeas, which I just find are so incredible in wreaths and also dry naturally in the design. So I've got two types, the fresh type here, and then these are from my garden, the hydrangea paniculata, which is really gorgeous, and I leave this for winter interest, but I do snip off a few for wreaths. I think they just add a lovely copper tone to designs. I do have hips in the garden, but actually I find florist ones, they just come in all different sizes and they're actually, you know, full of berries where mine have been eaten by the birds. I've also got thistle here, snecchio, pizziporum, just loads of wonderful green textures, loads of colour, and it's going to look so incredible. Then the other elements that we got are obviously our sundries, like everything we need to make the design. I obviously have a lot of sundries as a professional florist, but what you'll need to do is get these from a local florist or you can buy them online. So the things that you want are a copper wire base or wire frame. This is a 12-inch frame. They do come in different sizes, but I find 12-inch works really well for most front doors. I've then got my stub wire, and this is what we're going to use to attach on final flourishes, such as these crab apples here, and ribbon and pine cones. So they're essential. Then we've also got our sphagnum moss here. Then we've got our real wire, which we're going to use to actually attach everything onto the copper base. And then I've also got a ribbon, which I have pre-made, which is the final step. So the first step is to add your real wire onto your copper frame. So all I'm going to do is get about 10 centimetres worth, loop it through, and then wrap it round back on itself. So you just literally get your end and twirl it around. And this real wire is very, very strong, so you don't need to go too long. That's ideal, and that's not going anywhere. So I've attached that there, and this will stay on until we finish the entire wreath, so no cutting it off. So first of all, I'm going to add on my sphagnum moss. What you want to do is make sure you buy it from a reputable supplier. So that's a way that we know that it's sustainably grown. Why do we add the moss? So it acts as two things. It covers the wire frame, is you can turn it over, spray the back, and then all that water will soak through to the moss out the other side, which will hit all the stems that are at the front of it. So it's really great material to use. That's just going to really help with longevity as well as cover this wire frame. So I'm starting by using quite generous handfuls and essentially just covering the frame. And I've got my real wire attached there, and I'm going to go round once, and then at 1 inch intervals, just going to keep on adding. You don't need to add too much wire. It is very, very strong. And actually, if you did your gaps very close together, it's quite heavy. So we really don't want to make it heavier than it needs to be. So I'm just going to continue on, wrapping it over. And it is almost like Velcro. You can see here how I'm patting it down. It does kind of stick to itself. So I'm just going round, making sure I can't see any of the wire frame, squishing it down so we don't lose that circle. And I'm going to continue on until I've covered the whole wire base. So now I'm going to start building the wreath. So essentially, a wreath is lots of bundles of foliage placed on the wreath in intervals, which I will show you. So I'm going to start by using the evergreens. I find that the evergreens are always a great place to start. What you want to do is make sure that you have a really good solid structure to work with your bunches. So this is kind of like a really good size for this size wreath. Obviously it's up to you, and this is the creative bit of wreath making. You might want to have longer bits, shorter bits, and that's really where I love seeing people make this, because everyone makes them slightly differently. But for today, all my bunches are going to be quite uniform. The designs I showed you earlier were quite uniform in design, so we want to keep everything quite neat and tidy. But you might be more wild, so it's totally up to you, but that's what I'm going to be showing you today. So I'm going to continue on getting my bits of evergreen. So starting with the conifer, and then I'm going to add in some of this Douglas pine. And when you're building your bunches, what you want to make sure is think about what order you're putting things in. So you wouldn't want essentially, if I put that Douglas pine first and the conifer on top, you're kind of losing all the beauty of the pine. So I would think to place it on top and then I can still see the conifer. Also, what you want to do as you add things in is to stagger them. So I'm adding in the berry tadira. So what I wouldn't do is kind of put that right on the top. It's kind of still obliterating everything. So what I'd probably do with that bit is cut it down and then stagger it down and then angle it. So there you can see everything. Everything has its moment to shine and nothing's getting lost. And if you do that, if you stagger the lengths, then everything will look very beautiful and really full of depth and texture when you get to your finished design. So I'm going to keep on going. This is a real fun bit. So some of you might want to do each bunch exactly the same. You're going to get a really gorgeous, very concise design. Or you might want to have one bunch with like some thistle in, another bunch with rose hips, and just keep chopping and changing. That's the beauty of wreath making. This is all very much going to show your personality. As long as you know the principles, you can just make it exactly as you want to make it. So I think that's a really good place to be for my first bunch. You see, everything kind of spans out. If you think about a hand, you don't want everything tight, you want it to be like splayed like that. So I think that's really lovely. So then I'm going to attach it. So I've got my reel wire that we added earlier, kept that on, and I'm going to place the first bunch just slightly towards the outside of the rim of the wire. And then the next one I'm going to place slightly towards the inside. So we're going to go in a kind of staggered formation around the frame. Again, that just adds to the depth of it rather than just adding each bunch on top of each other. I'm going to snip off the ends, just like everything to be quite neat and tidy. Also, again, the more stems you have, the more the weight's going to continue going up and up as you keep designing. So I've got my wire here. I'm adding that first bunch just slightly towards the outside of the frame, and then I'm wrapping over once, twice. Now it depends. If you have a very large frame and you have very, very thick stems, and you might want to wrap 3 or 4 times. But for this material, 2 or 3 times is absolutely adequate. It's not going to go anywhere. And then I'm going to start adding my second bunch. So I'm going to use the same ingredients as the base, which was the conifer and then the Douglas pine. And then I'm going to continue and use the conifer. It's basically duplicating exactly what I did for that first bundle, making sure that I have a nice full bundle, staggering down the ingredients. And I'm going to actually use, we've got some wild Senecio here. I'm going to use some of that in the middle. So you can see if I add one other ingredient in, how much it changes it. So that's something to be mindful of, like adding one different variety in can really change the feel of your wreath, which is the magic. Then I'm going to add in a thistle, like that. And again, I want to use quite a tall stem. I want to make sure that I don't lose that. If I did put it too low, then I'm just going to lose it once I start adding on the bundles. So a nice tall stem like that, so it can all still be seen. So how do you know where to place your second bundle? What you don't want to do is put it too on top of the first bundle. If you do that, you're just completely covering up that first bundle. And it's going to take you a very long time to finish your wreath and use lots of material. Then you don't want to put it too far away where you can still see the moss there. So all we want to do is to cover the stems here. And that means that you'll get a really lovely display without too much or too little material. So as I said, the first bunch went slightly towards the outside of the rim. The next one is going to go slightly towards the inside. It's just a slight staggering. Make sure my bundle is looking beautiful. Then I'm going to snip off the ends. You want to leave probably about an inch there to give you enough of the stem to wrap your reel wire around. So just to cover the stem, slightly angled towards the inside. I put my second bunch there and then duplicate what I did before. Simply wrap your reel wire around. I'm going to do this one 3 times. So as you can see on the wire base, I've only put 2 bunches, but it's already quite a lot of coverage. So it doesn't take long to kind of create this wreath, which is so fantastic. And it's why I really love the the process of making. So I'm going to keep on going, adding bundles, slightly different variations of my ingredients here, but obviously still using the same ingredients, so it has that harmony. So now I've got to the stage where I'm going to add in my final bunch. So what we want to make sure is that we lift up that first bundle. Don't be scared, you've got the real wire in there, so you're definitely not going to harm the wreath in any way. And then we want to get our final bundle and really push it underneath, so there's no gap. So once we put that first bundle back, it's just a seamless circle. So I'm going to do that, really lift it up, pop those stems right underneath. Get my wire, and what you want to do, it's a little bit fiddly, but make sure that you don't wire over that first bundle. You don't want to kind of press it down. So you lift it up, again, go round with the wire twice. I like to do maybe 3 for the final bunch. So as you can see, now I've added that final bundle in, it's a seamless circle. So now for many of you, you might think, that's actually finished. But for me, what I like to do is kind of step back, have a look at it, and I always, for me, more is more. So I actually think that I can add a bit more into this. But the beauty of using the wire is that it acts as a scaffold, so we can easily pop more ingredients in there because we've got all that wire already in the wreath. So I'm actually going to add in some of this wild Senecio and then simply pop it in. So it allows you a little bit more freedom to be really considered with where you're adding things in. I'm going to do the same with the hips. And this is also great because as time goes on, certain elements might dry out quicker than others. Your conifer will last for weeks. Things like the berries might start to shrivel, especially if you're having your wreath inside. So you can swap ingredients in and out. So it's a really great way of just refreshing your wreath. You can get extra stems from your florist and just keep reviving it as the season goes on. And I have added in some thistles, as you saw, in the bunches, but I also like to add in a few just separately as well. So to add on things like crab apples, how do we do that? So this is where our wire comes in. Our wire comes in different gauges, and what you do to attach it is you turn it upside down, and we're going to make an artificial stem with this wire. You want to push it through. Do be careful, the ends are quite sharp. Push it through, then you turn it back on itself and just twist, maybe 2 or 3 times, and then put the ends together. So what I've done there is created an artificial stem. And what that allows me to do, I can literally put it in, as I did with the thistle or the hips, anywhere I want. And because it's on wire, you can manipulate the angle really, really easily. So again, it just adds, it just elevates the final design, makes it look very professional. So then the final step is to take off your real wire. So we do this at the very end. So you want to leave about 20 to 25 centimetres, give it a nice good cut. Again, be careful of that end because it will be particularly sharp. And then what you want to do is loop it over the wire frame. So I kind of scratch away a bit of the moss, and you can see that it's easily accessible to find the edge of your frame. And you want to loop it over and under. So essentially we're just looping it over and under, pull it tight, and I like to do it a couple of times to really make sure that everything is secure. When you've looped it over a couple of times, you just want to pop it back through itself, through that loop, and then pull very tightly. And then what I do is I get that wire, you don't want that sticking out, it could scrape your door. So you just put it back through the moss and then it's all concealed. And then all that's left is to add a bow. I've pre-made mine, again using the stem wire technique. So you want to work out where your top is and where your bottom is. So I'm going to put this here, but of course you can put more than one on, you could put it at the top, at the bottom, you can have 7, you can have different colours, you can use velvet, satin, it's really up to you. It's another opportunity to get your personality into your wreath. Now we do need to add some string to make sure that we can hang it. So I've got the string here and I've just folded it so it's doubling up. And then all I'm going to do is tie a knot in the end. So we've got a nice piece of string. And I want to find the top, pull back a bunch. You want to put the string in between two bunches. Then I'm going to pop it over the front. And then all you do is get the end, put it through the loop, pull tight, make sure everything's recovered, and then we're ready to hang our wreath.